Inside the Birds is back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan inside the Birds, and we are going to finish off our contract series. We're going to look at last episode. We did the newcomers and their contracts on offense. We're going to finish it out by going through some of the new players, new additions to the Eagles, and a re-signing on defense, and we'll get into what those contracts mean. And also, we'll talk about some of the things Nick Sirianni said at the owners' meetings. I had a flashback, Adam, when Nick was asked a certain question about a certain player, and his answer was sort of a flashback for me when I was down there. This one was in Orlando one year, and it was the year it was the offseason that they would end up cutting Deshaun Jackson. And, many of us were, well, not many of us, a couple of us were already front and center on that, myself included, that this was going to happen. And I remember at the round table, I think it was Zach Berman asked a carefully worded question to Chip Kelly. Do you want Deshaun Jackson on the team next year? And the answer Chip gave, if he wanted to shut down any speculation or rumor, or, if he wanted to lie, basically, he could have said, Deshaun, we're happy to have Deshaun back. He's a great player. He's going to be a big part of our organization. But instead, Chip said something like, we like Deshaun, but we have to do what's best for the team, which was like the automatic, okay, you've just confirmed what a couple of us had already been reporting. You did not slam dunk say Deshaun's going to be back. And not only that, you just said you're going to do what's best for the team when nobody asked you if this was good for the team. So there were a couple of answers we'll get into from Nick Sirianni that were pretty enlightening from that press conference down in West Palm Beach at the Breakers.
Yeah, at the Breakers. Yeah. Which is, gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've been there for those owners meetings. Goes back to the early 2000s. It's, as you know, it's on the water, so they got to, so you can hear. You can't really have anything on one part of that hotel and the property, but. So Sirianni spoke Tuesday morning at the breakfast at 8 a.m. Eastern. And the breakfast used to be, when you and I first started covering the league in the early 2000s, used to be like an hour and a half. They moved down on an hour. And now, in fact, Sirianni maybe had to go somewhere. He started like 7:57 because I looked at my watch. I remember my clock. And he was done at like 22 or 23 after. So whatever. Yeah, I mean, you really can't talk much about the draft, but I was interested to see. He went in a couple different directions. One, you and I kind of had the same thoughts. Like he talked about a new free agent. We'll get into that. We'll give you the intel and what we know about it and what Nick said, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
This goes to show you never know at these breakfasts what the coach is going to say. Sometimes, like Belichick was unbelievably close to the vest. He did it purposely for his disdain with the media and all that. And then Nick, every once in a while, give you something where you go, this could be fascinating.
Yeah. Two funny things about this breakfast is, one is that, you'll go, a head coach sits at a round table, and then the other tables in the round table, usually about 10 chairs, are supposed to be filled with media members. All right. So, and then there's, obviously 16 tables because they do AFC, NFC different days. So when you go to the Eagles one, the NFC, you'll see like maybe the head coach of whoever it is at the time, the Saints or the Falcons. That coach will be sitting there eating with maybe like 6 or 7 media members at the table asking questions, right? Kind of a normal environment. The Eagles table, whether it was Andy, whether it was Chip, now Nick Sirianni, Doug, there's no eating. There's 50 people at the table. I mean, you can barely see the table from one corner of the room, like the opposite corner. And then second, I'll never forget, I think it was Andy. It was either Andy or Chip sits down with you're supposed to go get your breakfast. That's the oddity of it all. It's called the media breakfast, right? And so the head coach sits down, has a plate full of food, and I think it was I can't remember if it was Andy or Chip, but sticks the fork in the food and is about to raise it to his mouth when all of a sudden the guy goes, all right, start your question. Somebody asks a question immediately. You know how the Philadelphia media scrum is. It's, hey, can you explain what? And then
Exactly.
He's got to put the food down, like it was right about to be in his mouth. So he puts the fork down, and then he doesn't touch the food for the next 45 minutes.
It happens every single time. As a matter of fact, my thing was, I'll get, if I like the food there, I'll get, I'll load up. And I try to actually get the first seat. Sometimes I would get there, like, because I don't
early.
What's that?
You gotta get there early.
Yes, I do. Well, see, there's certain, because I look at it from more from a national perspective. So I bounce around from table to table.
Right.
Like I might do. Okay, so Sirianni, I might sit down there for 10 minutes or stand up if I haven't gotten there early enough. But there's certain times, like I remember, because this is many years ago, there was a contractual issue with a player. Might have been with the Falcons. Remember Mike Smith, the Falcons head coach, who's a wonderful guy, like very approachable.
Yeah,
it might have been with him, and the story wasn't out, and I had it, so I was like, "Hey, coach, so and so's do a roster bonus on April 1st. Where are we going here with this situation?" And I kind of surprised him because he knew about it, but they thought they were going to keep it quiet. It was, I had 10 things I wanted to find out, and most questions the media has the same questions we have. But there was just one where he seemed to be dumbfounded, like why I'm asking him this. Like, what? Like, oh, well, we haven't made a decision yet. Like he had to come up with something where they already knew they weren't bringing the player back. Mm-hmm. But those things are rare. But it is always interesting. So to bring this back to the Eagles, when he talked about Avery Williams two or three times, like what is? I know Nick sometimes can't control his excitement, which I think is super cool. You like that about him?
Yep.
But I hope that based on what he said, we can only go on that because we know what we had intel on him based on people who've worked with him in the past with the Falcons, what he did for them and the snap counts, a kickoff punt returner, gunner, coverage player. Okay. He started his career off as a corner. Okay. Well, what else is there? There's no room on the depth chart at running back. Like, what are you thinking here? Then he threw a couple things. He just said offense, and you and I were texting each other, and we're like, "Wow, maybe there's something here." That he gave kind of a nice nugget, but it wasn't going to say what it is. But we can infer.
Well, in typical Nick Sirianni fashion, he first tried to be discreet about it, and then wound up like spilling, and then he sort of spilled the beans, and then he doubled down on after spilling the beans. So we'll get to that when we talk about Avery, because it was a funny moment and how he tried to be discreet, and then just it came out. Big week this week here on both the platforms. You're getting intel with Greg Cosell. You're getting all these great prospect breakdowns as we get into the NFL draft. We've got corner and safety coming along here. We already did defensive line and edge and off-ball linebacker. Pretty soon we'll get into the offensive prospects. And then, of course, last night was the first off-season Ask Greg Cosell for our Patreon Tier 3 members. Tier 3 is Ask Greg Cosell. So great night there as our great Patreon members are getting their own college prospect breakdown questions in Ask an Eagle that we do every month for Tier 2 and Tier 3, featuring Barrett Brooks. All right, we're really excited to have Barrett on. And by the way, Barrett, for those who don't know, has been doing his own film watching and prospect breakdowns for NBC Sports Philly. Cool. So he's another valuable. This is a guy who won a Super Bowl ring with the Steelers. Played for the Eagles, played O-line, has become a really good analyst for NBC Sports Philly, is with the team, around the team as an analyst all year. So always good to catch up to get not only his viewpoint on the Eagles, but his own playing career as an offensive. He has some great stories of being a Steelers offensive line back in that Steeler heyday there and what that was like, because he played with some pretty talented linemen. So always good when we get people to catch up with Barrett Brooks. And then tonight, for the platform, Patreon, Ask ITB live stream. You get to ask Adam questions every once in a while. I pop in there too and try to contribute. And that's all on our Patreon platform. It's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds.
And remember, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think all of the Patreon members get everything commercial free, correct?
Everything. If you are a Tier 2 or Tier 3 member, you get all the podcasts early, up the night before, sometimes even before that, and commercial free. It's a great way to take advantage of a perk and not have to deal with any of the commercials. So bam, you get it right on the Patreon platform. You get to listen to it and you're not disturbed by us trying to sell you something. So it's always great. Oh, and our series with Sam. Sam's doing a great. Sam Finkel, our analytics reporter, doing an excellent job giving you the analytics version of all these college prospects, measuring their athleticism and their college production, how they intersect, who is the more productive players, who are the more athletic players, who are those players that combine both and become first-round prospects. So he's been doing the same position groups that Greg Cosell has been breaking down just from an analytics standpoint. And stay locked in, of course, to the DeCecco Daily. Andrew DeCecco giving you his thoughts and observations and intel from his time covering the Eagles on our platform. So a lot of good stuff as we charge into the offseason here.
No doubt. Looking forward to it.
All right, so let's get into Nick Sirianni speaking at the owners' meetings, West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Breakers during the Tuesday morning breakfast. I mean, the story that I told earlier about Deshaun Jackson and Chip, the flashback I had was when he was asked about Dallas Goedert, and I forget how the question was exactly phrased. I think it was, "Do you expect to have Dallas Goedert on the team this year?" And Nick Sirianni, in that Chip Kelly fashion, said, "We love Dallas, but we're going to wind up doing what we have to do." He goes, "You can't always keep everybody that you want." I mean, he basically dropped enough qualifiers to make you realize, what we've been talking about. Like, there's a good chance, probably, Dallas Goedert will not be on the team.
Well, he is speaking of that. He gave, and this is the best thing he said. He said it did right at the start, almost like what a GM would say. He goes, "Quote, well, right now he's on the team."
Right.
That
right now.
When I was at the Orlando one, when Chip asked Deshaun one, it was so obvious after whoever you mentioned Zach Berman asked the question that was it for Deshaun. Although I'm sure you and I probably knew then that we knew other stuff, that Deshaun was not coming back,
right?
And that he wasn't going to have the trade value. But it was just funny how Chip was so blunt without saying they're going to cut him. He gave you every clue he could, and Nick gave some pretty good clues. Now, I would warn people that we learned our lesson with 3 years ago with Slay, when the Eagles told Drew Rosenhaus and Slay, "We're cutting Darius Slay." Mm-hmm. They told Darius that they're going to cut him, and then 5 hours later they changed their mind. So just because in our reporting and others, and we have some stuff, I don't think that's out there, but we know that they've been trying to move him. They're trying to move his money, which is over $14 million, no guaranteed money, and it's not been easy to move him. Although sometimes it's interesting. At the owners' meeting, sometimes you could get the ball rolling, because it's in any kind of business transaction in whatever career you're in. It's always better when you're standing next to somebody, whoever these trade talks go. It's a little bit easier sometimes when you see someone's face and you're talking directly to them when you're trying to make a business transaction. As a matter of fact, I'd have to look this up. I'm almost certain that Corey Simon was traded, or something happened with Corey Simon. Might remember him from Eagles, maybe to the Colts. Was he traded to the Colts?
I thought it was that they just lifted the franchise tag.
Okay. All right, maybe that's what it was. I know something happened with an Eagles player. Something broke where they moved him or made that decision, as you mentioned, that he wasn't going to come back. They removed the franchise tag. But so sometimes you get the ball rolling, whether it's the combine. John Robinson, the former Titans GM, was on the record explaining when after, maybe Howie did too, but I remember Robinson saying he was asked by the media, when do you consider trading AJ Brown to the Eagles? And he said, Howie approached him at the combine that year. And then he said, "No, we're going to try to extend him. So whatever." And Howie, which makes him one of the reasons why he's the best GM right now in the National Football League, is because he doesn't just take no for an answer. He stays on top of it, checks back. But again, face to face, you could find out. In fact, that's where they brokered the DeMarco Murray trade to the Titans. That's actually where a lot of it went down. It was at the with face to face, by the way. At the combine. So I sometimes business does get done here.
Right. And by the way, the exact quote, it was, "Right now he's here on our football team, and obviously Dallas Goedert has meant a lot to us. We'll see how that plays out.
Right now,
he's a heck of a player. He's a heck of a leader. I want to be able to have as many good guys back as possibly can, but that is not the reality of the NFL."
He just gave you the answers. He just gave you the answers. Yeah, you don't have to guess. He's telling you that. It's business. It is what it is. He has no control over it because it's not his decision.
Right.
It's Howie's and whatever cash. In our reporting, we said they're trying to move cash. They're trimming their cash budget this year. It has zero to do with the cap, as we've told everyone from the beginning. Some people are finally getting it, but It is what it is. But I'll tell you what, they're not a better team without him. Don't give me this. Oh, they were 8-1 without him.
Yeah. No, I think they even know that the tight end would have to be high priority in the draft if they move on from
but honestly though, now on what you just said before we move on, just a couple other things that Sirianni talked about. We'll go inside those things, but even if by surprise that Goddard's on the team, he's on a 1-year deal. They're not extending his contract, so the draft is always about the future. It should not stop. Again, however, their board is stacked. If Loveland, the tight end, and Michigan is the highest player on their board at 32, take the player. It's about the future. So that takes care. That has nothing to do with Goddard being on the team or not. Goddard's 30.
Yeah. Speaking of, you wrestled with that scenario in your mock draft 2.0, which is up now. I put the full version up on both podcast and YouTube platforms, but I thought that was an interesting. You were trying to frame it because that's the one position, tight end, where you see guys go sometimes really high, and then sometimes, no matter how talented they are, they sort of drop because of positional value. So I listened to you kind of wrestle with, hey, if Loveland gets to the bottom end here of the first round, you can't positional value yourself into a DT or an edge when a guy that talented is right there.
100%. And by the way, and I know some people are mad at me because I put a safety there for the Eagles. I won't give the name of it. The guy we talked about, we talked about with Greg Cosell on the Intel. This is one of the top safeties in college football the last couple of years, and I'll just say it like that.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've learned, and the late Jerry West, who was the Lakers GM, talked about this, over the years, when you're picking last or very late in the first round, you don't have to go with conventional wisdom. Oh, well, you can't take this position. No, you take the best player by your grade. You don't worry about what the median fans think. They don't factor in. If they factor in, you're going to get fired. You never listen to anyone outside your building. You just don't.
Right.
You have consultants and all that, and you might get some opinions from some people you respect around the league, but you just stack your board. And if your board tells you that the best player on the board is a safety, I know it's just something you don't normally do. Now they're picking 32nd. They're not picking 15th. That's a different story on your point about positional value. But at 32, folks, you're not taking a kicker. You're not taking a long snapper. You're not taking a quarterback. There's not a lot that you're going to roll out there, to be honest with you.
100%. All right. So speaking of giving away the answers a little bit, we've talked about Cooper DeJean, and you and I both said that from what we're hearing, they really do want to keep him at nickel at least for one more year. And Nick was asked about it, and he gave a very similar, without saying, look, nothing's been decided yet, but we really value his versatility. So that is obviously to me a key that they really like. And why not? What DeJean brings to the slot, it's perfect for what Vic Fangio does in that defense. It allows him to be an epicenter, if you will, of sim pressures if he wants to do that, whereas playing outside you can't. And but it does mean they have to make sure they have the correct answers on the outside. And he did, he was asked about Keely Ringo, and he didn't like the way he talks about Nolan Smith. You can tell he loves Nolan Smith. The way he talked about Keely Ringo is a little different. He's like, that's a guy who will compete for the job. And then he talked about AdoreeJackson and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see how they attack this outside corner spot.
It is, as a matter of fact. And again, we don't at 32. Now we'll see if Howie trades up or trades out. I know a lot of people think he'll move the pick, and it makes sense because he's trader Howie. So we'll see what happens. But if they draft a corner in the first round, they've already given you the answers to the test for several years. DeJean will not be playing corner.
Yeah, that's correct.
So we'll see what happens. But you made a point weeks ago when we put this out on one of our shows that what we're hearing is probably going to be nickel, at least for this season. Probably it's not definite.
Right.
You made a really good point though. You're like, well, hey, wait a minute. If they're doing this, if you're his agent or DeJean, nickels don't get paid. What corners get paid?
Right.
That's something. I know they don't, they have to do what's best for the football team. Totally get that. But I'm trying to be fair here, calling it down the middle. If I'm Cooper and his agency that represents him, I'm not going to put up with it for a long time. It's a big money, man. I mean, we've not seen the day where nickels get paid $20 million a year. Corners now are getting $25 to $30 million a year. Or right. $25 to $27 million a year is the top money.
Right.
So that's a big discrepancy.
I'm really fascinated to see what happens this coming year with in year 3 for Trent McDuffie with the Chiefs, how they use him. Will he be outside? Will he be nickel? If he is nickel and he's really effective like he was as a rookie, what kind of contract extension would he get in the offseason? That's all this. That's the kind of player that if you're Cooper DeJean, you're looking at saying, do they pigeonhole him into nickel so they can pay him less, or does he eventually move to the outside so he can paid like at the outside? Because there's a lot of similarity between how those guys have been used.
It's funny you mention him because I remember when Greg Cosell told us that, hey, FYI, they've moved McDuffie to the outside. This is in the second half of last season.
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, he doesn't really have the ideal size, which is why he got moved to nickel. And that was the one issue that clubs had with him. Didn't you have the note that for that draft, Eagles really liked him? They weren't too concerned with the size, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they would have taken him, I was told, in the first round. I think is that the year they moved up for Jordan Davis? I believe
that was 22, correct. Yeah, 22, yeah.
If they had not been able to move up and they had stayed there, I believe I forget where they were picking at the time, but Trent McDuffie was very high on their board at that point. Yeah.
And he's really good. I know he's smaller than you'd like, but he's a really good football player, really, really good leader, smart guy, tough guy, and all that. But the corner position is fascinating. And with Ringo, you got AdoreeJackson, who the Eagles have liked for a number of years. Well, when we do the contract show, you'll hear it. He got very little money. He's making less than he did last year with the Giants. So we'll see. But the corner position to me, opposite Mitchell, is fascinating because it could go a variety of ways.
There you go. All right, so let's talk about this new free agent addition that Nick Sirianni is glowing about. And I really want to give a lot of respect to whoever asked the question. It might have been Jeff McLean. I'm not 100% sure, but the question was phrased really well to try to get the answer you're looking for on Avery Williams, which is, what's your plan? If you say, what is your plan with Avery Williams? Nick's going to say, you see, he can do a lot of things, but you're trying to be specific. So the question was, and I love this question. I have an appreciation for good questions, right? What classroom will Avery Williams be in throughout the week in practice? Great freaking question. Love it. Right. And Nick's response was still evasive on it. Eventually he just says, we're really excited about what he can do on special teams and we'll see. And then as he just keeps talking, he says, oh yeah, and we think he can bring something to the offense. And then he realized he at least took a player who has played both cornerback and running back in the NFL and now told you that the plan was to use him offensively if they can find him in there. And then Nick goes, yes, I said offense. He kind of doubles down. So after trying to elude the question in an only Nick Sirianni way, he winds up spilling the beans and then doubling down on it. So Adam, Avery Williams is a guy who last played offense in the NFL in 2022 with the Falcons as a running back. He had 22 carries that year. He has not carried the ball since. And then the year before, he actually started a game at cornerback in 2021 for the Falcons and played some corner. But again, it's been years since this guy has played on any other side of the ball outside of special teams.
Yeah, and he had the ACL injury a couple of years ago. So
right.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with his role here, because Sirianni kind of gave you some pretty significant clues. Now, again, as we said earlier in the show, the first three spots, he's not beating them out. He's not beating out Barkley, obviously.
Right.
Shipley was a draftee, and Dillon. So those three jobs are taken. So he's not going to be. It's going to have to be something out of the box, right? I think that's obvious.
Yeah.
Now, he's not really a slot receiver. Back in when he was drafted in the 5th round by the Falcons, he had some good quickness. He's a smaller guy. He's under 5'9". He's under 200 pounds, depending on, we don't know. We know what he was with the Falcons. He was under 200. We don't know what he weighed here, but it could be a specialty role. It could be, not that he's a slot receiver, but here's where Kevin Patullo comes. He's not been a play caller. This is kind of the intrigue of Patullo, yet another play caller for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any experience. We don't know. Like, we knew we had a great intel on Kellen Moore coming in, and Kellen had to change some stuff up because they signed Barkley, and they were going to become more of a running team, which is really not what Kellen is. He's not been a play caller for a team that's heavy run. So this is interesting now with Patullo as the new play caller. how does he see Avery Williams? How much is Sirianni going to be involved in it?
Right.
It's the fact that Nick said that clearly, not that he's going to commandeer anything. They've obviously they've discussed this. That Howie obviously says, hey, we like this player. What are your thoughts? And he gave him his thoughts. So I find the whole thing fascinating.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the way Nick spoke about it 3 times, by the way, 3 different times he mentioned when he was asked about the new players that they acquired, all of them, the first guy he mentioned was Avery Williams. So that was kind of shocking. I was like, oh, okay. And then he talked about him again, and then that third time. So if you're doing your too early 53-man roster projection here, going into the draft and coming out, you're putting him on the team because clearly right now you see that Nick Sirianni wants this thing to work out, has a plan. Him and Patullo and the offensive staff have some kind of vision of him playing some kind of gadget role or whatever on the offense. But, we'll see in August. I mean, it also feels like it's a guy who, if you put through waivers, you could probably bring him back to your practice squad. I don't know if there's going to be a huge demand.
Well, he's vested. He doesn't go through waivers.
Oh, is he vested? I thought everybody goes through waivers at the end of camp, though.
No, no. It's the trade deadline through the Super Bowl, and then you go back to normal rules. Oh, by the way, you know what's interesting about Avery Williams? I forgot about this. He never played running back in college. He was a dynamic punt returner, one of the best in college football for a number of years. Did some kickoff returning. Strictly a corner. So, and we mentioned running back. The Falcons made a decision because he was too small. He wasn't going to play corner anymore. So, again, there's really no room for him to play running back. You could give him a couple carries a game as a changeup. So clearly here, there's something outside the box that they're seeing.
There you go. Was there an Avery Williams who played in the NBA, or am I thinking of Avery Johnson?
Avery Johnson, the former number 15 for the Spurs, who became a head coach in Alabama. Alabama head coach, right?
College basketball. He has like a squeaky voice. He
does. Point guard, right? He's a point guard.
That Spurs backcourt of Avery Johnson and Vinny Del Negro. Remember them? Vinny Del Negro?
Yes. They won. I'm sure Avery Johnson. He must have won some rings.
I think he got. I think he was on the early end of those Spurs dynasty. Yeah, good stuff there. All right, so that is. Oh, one last thing that I thought was notable was speaking of classrooms, Ben Van Sumeren is fully entrenched in the running back / fullback classroom. So when we talk about inside linebacker depth, I think we have to stop talking about, which by the way is razor thin, as we've mentioned many times. I'm not sure we can use Ben Van Sumeren anymore as one of those. Yeah, but they have him coming back from an injury, and we'll see how he is. I mean, it sounds like he is firmly entrenched at fullback.
Well, as Greg Cosell told us, he had heard that Van Sumeren had great hands, so we'll see. Ben's a pretty good athlete, but he's come back from a major knee injury. So right now, as we speak, man, they are paper thin at inside backer. As a matter of fact, they're not playing game until September. Obviously, they're going to have to add 2 players, but it's Bond right now. It's Trott Jr., Dean, who knows when he'll be available, coming off of the torn patellar. Hopefully he's back by midseason.
Yep.
And then Dallas Gannon play for Jason Candle, Sirianni's guy at Toledo. So they're really, really super light at inside backer. Not that they're going to draft one early, but that's something that they're going to have to address going forward.
If the Eagles draft Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle out of Toledo, will the Eagles have like 80% of all Toledo alumni in the NFL?
We'd have to look it up. How many? Which NFL team has the most Toledo players?
Oh, I mean, it would have to be the Eagles by far with 3. I mean, I can't imagine any other team has more than 1.
I know, and we have to look at them. What kind of program do they have? But Candle's a really good coach.
He is.
Well, do we know this for a fact? I would have to assume no team has more Georgia players than the Eagles. How could it be possible?
Oh my God! I don't think Georgia has as many Georgia.
You know what's crazy? How long Howie shunned that school? I don't know. I'm sure there were players they liked. They just didn't get. Someone drafted the player in front of them. It's just kind of funny how Georgia and Alabama. That's probably not probably. It's part of why they were not as good.
Yeah,
and then they addressed it, and now they're in super overdrive and. They have an elite football operations in terms of player evaluation. Basically, you can only go by the last 4 years. It's just funny how that all of a sudden turns around.
The last 2, Sam Finkel and I were actually joking about that because I had forgot. We were going through the corners, and we were talking about how long before last year you would go 20 years before finding an Eagles corner that like projected really well on his scatter chart, like great athleticism and college production. and the name Brandon Boykin came up, and that was I forgot he was a Georgia kid, and Chip I think drafted him, and he played slot corner, and then he wound up getting hurt and this and that. But before that, you're talking about Reggie Brown in 2005 as a wide receiver. Just not a lot of. Jeff Owens, that's a great name from the past. Defensive.
And he had a
really bad injury. Yeah,
7th round out of Georgia. He was one of the super sleepers. They really thought they got right.
Yep.
Back then,
he burst that. I saw it. I thought he was a fairly impressive player. Almost Moro Ajomo, like 7th round pick, but had good interior rush. But he got hurt.
Did he get hurt? Was it his rookie summer training camp? Or?
I think it was his second year. I think his rookie year was mostly not playing like most 7th round picks, and then I think they had a plan for him, and then he got hurt. Great guy, awesome guy.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Jeff Owens. So all right, last thing to cover is, and thank you to Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski for confirming it. The Eagles and the Browns will have a joint practice this year at the NovaCare complex. This is going to be their second one in 3 years, correct?
Yeah. Okay. So this is actually the 3rd time I was at the one in Cleveland,
right?
Korea,
Ohio. This will be the 3rd time. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, that's when someone with the Browns said to me, "Wow, they're really good." And then a traveling coach who I'd met there, who's now coaching in the NFL. He was out of work and then he came back. Said to me, "Holy smokes, this is like a Super Bowl team." I'm like, "How the hell do you know that?" He goes, "Because I've watched 2 days of practice. They're really good and they're really deep." The guy was right. I mean, they did make it to the Super Bowl. So yeah, Stefanski, Kevin, who went to the University of Pennsylvania. You might remember his dad, Ed Stefanski, great guy, former Sixers GM. Unfortunately, didn't work out for Ed.
Right,
he's a Sixers GM, but who was consulting for the Pistons for a number of years. I don't know if Ed's still there, but Kevin will bring. Kevin did say I think they're coming to Philly, if I'm not mistaken, this time.
Right,
which would be the last 2.
Which means they're going to play each other in a preseason game, by the way.
Yeah, almost. It's very rare nowadays for you to travel and not be playing that team in the preseason. It makes like no sense why you wouldn't. And look, the Browns will have a new look at quarterback. Kenny Pickett will be one of them.
How about that?
Yeah.
Do you see that the college football teams, I guess Dion, Coach Prime, has been trying to get this thing going where they do, instead of spring games, they do joint practices.
No, are they?
Graham Brown from Syracuse was kind of like, I like this idea, and they've called each other about doing it. I guarantee you this will not take off in college football because of the portal and because of the poaching. You do not want to show other the talent that you have. I can understand why a mid talent, and no offense, but Colorado, as much as they've progressed under Dion, they are not a top team. You can understand why they would want to like join practice and using that magnetism Dion has is maybe get a few players there end. But if I'm like Ohio State, if I'm Penn State, if I'm Texas, I'm not joint practicing with a bottom 25 team and letting them see what kind of talent I have. And making these phone calls and back.
You're right. That it's a way to audition for another team. In fact, look, remember we've talked about this before. People know this. Jay Ajayi, the Dolphins came to Philly for a joint practice, and by the way, did they play them in the preseason that year?
They did. They played. They practiced, joint practice. They had a preseason game, and you're right. When they traded for Jay Ajayi, this is 2017. Howie specifically said, "Well, we had more intel on him because we watched him a couple of days of practice here, and we saw what kind of player he was." So. Yeah, that's the exact reason why in college football you would not want that to happen.
Wow, that's a great point you make. I didn't know anything about this. I would be so interested if it was like, I don't know, Penn State versus Colorado in joint practice. Hell, if there were some great draftable players. I'd drive to State College.
I mean, theoretically, it's a good idea, especially if you're going to get rid of spring games. But I just think that there's all sorts of madness that can ensue. But we'll see. So Syracuse coach Fran Brown, who's a South Jersey guy, Temple guy, he actually called Dion and said, "Hey, I like this idea too." And they're sort of, last I heard or read, we're trying to work something out, which is like a Syracuse Colorado joint. That's if you were to pick 2 schools to agree to a joint practice, right? You would not think Syracuse and Colorado, right? You would think like two schools close to each other or something like that. But interesting. Well, we'll see. Maybe it'll take off, and I'll be wrong. But that's where it is right now.
Nice.
All right, we're going to go into these defensive contracts of Eagles newcomers. They signed a bunch of guys on defense. They re-signed Zach Bond. We'll get into their contracts in a second. First, you have got to hear our message from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, folks, you heard the commercial. You heard Merrill Reese. Listen, when Merrill tells you, you got to listen, right? You got to go to Sky Motor Cars for the best car shopping experience there ever can be. It is a wonderful, the inventory is great. The customer service is friendly. You'll get great guidance. Car shopping sucks these days, but not at Sky Motor Cars. They make it a fantastic experience. If you get in there and in their office in Westchester, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. If not, just go right to their great website, SkyMotorCars.com, and check out all their great inventory.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're looking for a new car, Jersey, Delaware, Philly, New York, whatever driving distance, before you go, you could, and you obviously could do this online, you could read all the reviews on like cars.com or wherever you want to go. You mentioned the customer service. That's why people keep going back there. That's why professional athletes, not just Eagles, yes, a lot of Eagles going back to Sheldon Brown, but people trust Brett Schiller and his group. It's a really great car buying experience. No pressure. I've gone there a number of times, so I've seen it. People just like, and you see their IG is super cool. And you see people love taking pictures with their new cars. It's cool.
That's right. Everywhere else, the car shopping experience is getting worse. At Sky Motor Cars, it gets better because you realize what it's like when people appreciate you and know what you want and can help you. So love our folks at Sky Motor Cars. All right, so last episode we did contracts on offense, and there was one guy that we didn't have yet, but we have it now. So let's finish off offense by going to Harrison Bryant, and let's talk about his deal, Adam.
So keeping it in, although, funny, Nick Sirianni did talk about this in passing about the guys who are in one-year contracts did a good job last year. Obviously, Zach Bond being about as great as it gets. Mm-hmm. So Harrison Bryant keeping within $2 million per contract, other than Azeez Ojulari. Bryant gets 1 year, $1.2 million, $780,000 fully guaranteed at signing. So they're fully guaranteeing over half of it, but again, it's only $1.2 million.
Right.
So and there are no it's so fun. There are no voidables with this. No voidable years with it. I don't know how
I'm kind of disappointed to hear that. Actually,
I know. I don't. And look, they've done voidables on deals under $2 million. I don't know how they pick and choose. I'd love to know that. But Harrison Bryant is a guy that has got ability. He's just had this worse luck with quarterback. It's like Tyler Conklin, right? The Jets signed Tyler Conklin coming over from Minnesota. Pretty good athlete position. He's a two-way player. He can block a little bit, but pretty good athlete, run after the catch guy. Well, his numbers were paltry with the Jets because the quarterback play for the most part was terrible. And then unfortunately Rodgers was hurt for a majority of his 2 seasons with the Jets. So his numbers weren't good, and that's why he signed a deal for around $3 million. Harrison Bryant gets a low-end deal. Well, he's been subject to bad quarterback play.
Yeah.
And Hurts being here, and I know Hurts doesn't throw to the tight end a lot. He doesn't throw the ball over the middle of the field a lot. Still with a better quarterback, a guy who's healthy, who's young, he's 26 years old. So, maybe he could finally put together a decent season as a backup tight end.
Well, listen, we mentioned it when they signed him. This is a guy who won the Mackey Award his senior year at FAU and had over 1,000 yards receiving. So there's a pass catcher in there. And like you said, hopefully the environment that he comes to here in Philadelphia, you get to see it. I think what jumps out to me is, and I don't know how much you want to make of this, Adam, but we did Kylan Granson's contract last episode. I believe Kylan got more guaranteed money based on what you're saying here. Because you said 675 was fully guaranteed by
on Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, is that what you said?
It is. Let me pull it up my file. It is 780 fully guaranteed at signing.
780, and I thought we said that the one for Granson was about 1.1 or something. Because I remember saying, "Hey, that's almost more than 50% of the contract is guaranteed." I thought that was a little interesting. Even though
Granson's, it was actually $1 million fully guaranteed at signing, $1.75 million. Now, okay, speaking, so this goes back to Sirianni and Avery Williams. Granted, he just mentioned he's too small to play true tight end. He's got to be it's called a U or an F. He can't be an inline tight end. He's got to play out. He's got to play off a little bit, off the line.
Right,
like Calcaterra, exactly. And Nick's talked about Calcaterra's role as the F. So I know there's 3 or 4 different type of tight end positions, but that's this Patullo might. And again, is this from Patullo? Did he tell Howie, hey, I like this Colin Granson? Did Nick say it? Did they both? Whatever the case may be, there may be something here because they don't really use a slot receiver. At least they haven't in a true slot receiver. So maybe there's something outside the box here with these new free agents.
Maybe. All right, let's move over to the defensive side. Josh Uche. What do we have on Josh Uche's contract?
Josh Uche got, again, somehow they finagled it under $2 million. $1.92 million is the total cash. The full guarantee at signing is with his signing bonus and partial guarantee in his salary, $1.25 million. So they're guaranteeing, fully guaranteeing well over half of it. But again, it's the total cash is under $2 million.
Right.
It's the old term was make good contract. Yeah, I get it. There's some guaranteed money, but that's not going to keep him on the roster. He's got to perform. He's got to show that, okay, the last couple of years has been not who he is, and he's way better than this. He's still a young player, a relatively young player. He turns 27 in September. So there's something. Greg said it. Didn't he say there's something there with Uche?
He said there's something in there in his body.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, but
I knew what he meant. It just sounded funny when he said it.
Right. The tape shows him. There's still something there.
Yeah.
And Josh knows he's got to perform. He won't be on the football team. That's what these contracts tell us.
Right.
They're so small. The guarantee money is so small. Okay. Look, Devin White wound up doing a restructured deal to get it for the Eagles to release him early. He wound up taking less than the $5 million, around $5 million that he was going to make, just so they gave him a chance to play last season. That was the agreement. These you don't have to. The guarantee money is so small that you got to prove yourself in training camp in the preseason.
Yeah. All right. So that's Josh Uche's contract. Let's talk about Azeez Ojulari's deal.
Now, this one clearly to me was like, okay, we're gonna. If you're Howie, you know you're gonna probably have some competition. Yes, he's got a major injury history, spending 3 different seasons on injury reserve. So it wasn't like he was going to make $10 million, though. When he plays, he's very productive. So his contract is total cash is $4.285 million. All of it's fully guaranteed at signing. It's not a ton of money. This one, he'd have to be so bad to be cut. I mean, it's, I hate to say lock. It's pretty close to being lock. We don't do percentages on the show, but there's a very strong chance, no matter how he performs, he'll be on the football team. As of now, they just don't have the depth at edge. They don't have anyone to really. Nolan Smith obviously had a really good season for 3/4 of it. Hasn't done it for a full season. Everybody's intrigued by Alex Hunt, but he got thrown in there. Nice story, but he's not proven yet. Ojulari's been, he's been in the league since 2021, and the Eagles know him very well because they've gone up against him for a number of years. Actually, Nick's first year in 2021. So this is kind of throw fastball at the offense kind of guy, and as a situational pass rusher, it's a nice number for situational pass rusher. This is pretty good cash. Yeah,
I just question one thing, and we've seen teams do this and players. If you're a pass rusher, right, who's had some success in the NFL, even if you've been hurt, why would you sign a 2-year deal structured like a 1-year deal? What benefit is it?
Well, he signed a 1-year deal, Ojulari.
I thought it was a 2-year deal.
No, it's 1-year deal.
Oh, my bad. Then never mind.
All of it's guaranteed.
Remember when they signed Chris Long to a 2-year deal?
Okay.
And that was so smart by the Eagles because they wound up having him back the year after a really nice year as a situational pass rusher for the Eagles. And they had him basically at a bargain for year 2. And I always thought, why would you do that? You know, if you have a chance to get into a good environment, have a really good year, you want to be a free agent again the next year, not under a sweet team-friendly deal for that second year.
By the way, he's got a 4.
Okay.
What's that?
I don't know why I thought Azeez was 2.
No, but his 1 year deal, he's got a 4 year void, 26 through 29 or avoidable years for cap purposes. So
Right.
we'll see. We'll see if this works out. Everyone should be excited about it just because his tape is really good. As we've mentioned a number of times, he's just barely over 6'2", but he's got left tackle arms. That's important. It's important.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. But he's. I'm not saying he could start, but he could certainly be no worse than their third edge rusher based on what they have now. What we have to see what they do in the draft.
Right. Absolutely. Let's move on to the middle linebacker spot, inside linebacker, and Zach Baun, who signed that blockbuster extension.
Yeah, it's weird. His contract wasn't filed till late. I don't know why, because it was only a week ago that he signed it, I think.
Oh, okay.
Remember, he had his press conference like 2 weeks or 3 weeks after he agreed to the deal.
Yeah.
And they show the picture of him signing it, which the teams like to do. So he got a 3-year deal with a 2-year structure. Okay. He got a 3-year deal worth $51 million. The first 2 years are fully guaranteed. He's got the typical Eagles structure. The first year's he's got the option bonus. And he's got 2 option bonuses, one in year 2, one in year 3. The second one is fully guaranteed in year 2. The third one is no guarantees. As a matter of fact, the $17 million in cash, which is not guaranteed in year 3, that includes a $1 million roster bonus due the 5th day of free agency. So that'll force them to make some sort of decision. But it's simple. Now the only thing is, if he's playing well, they'll want him back. But he'll be 31 in 2027. We forget he's a little bit older than you think. He turns 29 and right at the end of the season on December 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating situation. He's been an incredible story, one of the best stories in the history of our show. This is now our 8th season. Comes out of nowhere, playing a position he's never played before, kind of like Jordan Mailata. So we'll see how this works out for them. But and he does a 4-year void, years 28 through 2031 for cap purposes. So it's kind of like, okay, 2 years, you're getting all the cash, kind of like Bryce Huff. And then we'll see about the 3rd year and then it's at 31 years old. It's even if he plays great, I don't know that they'll want him back at 17 million. It just depends on where they're at and where he's at, injuries and so forth, and production.
Yeah.
But they rewarded him for 2 years. He earned it. Great story. We'll never really know what he had out there. That's I don't know if it's been reported. I wonder what other teams were willing to offer him, but we've not heard that.
Right.
We know that other teams were interested, but we never really heard what kind of money was out there for him.
Yeah. I mean, good for Zach Baun. Talk about getting wealthy overnight in a very short span. I mean, he'll have an opportunity if he plays well to get another contract, and could be pretty good. There are teams that aren't afraid to give money to linebackers closer to 30, like the Saints signing Demario Davis a couple of years ago for a big deal, right? And he was approaching 30, if not already 30. So, yeah, good for him. He has an opportunity to keep getting paid. And let's finish off this with a look at AdoreeJackson's contract. A lot of former Giants.
You know what's funny about AdoreeJackson's situation? So he signed hugging up to the season last year. So he had no leverage. If he wanted to play, he had to take a deal. But it was $1.75 million last year, not guaranteed.
Right.
Because he signed so late. Why would you guarantee him any money?
Right. Now,
going to this year's contract, okay, which is also 1 year, keeping it under. Wow. Wait a minute. Did they do the same exact money? Okay. Wow. Okay. This is sent to me, and I'm assuming.
I like how I'm getting your real-time reaction to this.
Yeah, I'm looking at the email that someone sent me, and someone, it's one of our contract people we've used for years, and I really want to know this. Did they set it up? Did they just feel like they were going to copy last year? I have no idea. But this year's deal is interesting. So last year there was no guaranteed money with the Giants. This year is also $1.75 million. It's actually, so it's $1.5 million in cash salary. It's based as paragraph 4.
Right.
Is $1.5 million not guaranteed, and then the rest of the $250,000 to get it to 1.75 is tied up in per game roster bonuses, which is $14,706 per game.
Wow. Is any of this guaranteed?
No, none of it is.
The entire contract is non-guaranteed.
Correct.
Wow.
Just like last year.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Because last year, this is not like a Nick Morrow situation where you're coming off 17 starts and, you know.
Yeah. Let me go through this email. Let me make sure there wasn't a signing bonus, because I have to believe him signing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go through the explanation.
That's what's kind of surprising. This is a contract that it felt like Aziz could have gotten in June if he wanted to.
You mean Adore? You mean?
I'm sorry, Adore. Yeah, Adore.
I got to look at this right up here.
Okay.
It looks like it is a signing bonus of 500 grand. We'll get this corrected. This looks like to me a $500,000 signing bonus and 500 grand fully guaranteed of his 1.255 million. I'm just looking at this email, because the guy that helps me, he helps me explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at he threw 3 contracts together, and he sent them through his phone, so it looks kind of odd.
Yeah,
it looks like to me, boy, they really, I don't know why. I find this interesting, and I'm sure it's right. The total cash is exactly like last year, but the guarantee is $1 million, and it is right. Okay, I see now as I go through this. We're finished here with this. It is $1 million fully guaranteed at signing, but the cash is the same.
Right.
And again, $1 million is not going to keep him on the roster. He's going to have to perform. And I find it interesting. And I didn't hear the stuff you talked about with Keely Ringo. I find it interesting, and I'm just going by what you said about his quotes, that he wasn't. And I could understand that he's not willing to commit to Ringo. It's too early.
Yeah.
Plus, they haven't even had the draft yet.
And that's what he kept saying. He kept saying we have so much time between now and the start of the season.
By the way, Ringo this season, just for kicks,
mm-hmm.
make $1.03 million in cash, not guaranteed. There's no when you're in the 4th round, you don't get anything other than signing bonus. You don't get any guaranteed salary.
Mm-hmm.
So not that they cut him or anything. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of where they're at, the cornerback position. And Quinion, by the way, he'll make his base salary fully guaranteed at $960,000, and then he's got a 5th day of the league year roster bonus, which is fully guaranteed at $508,000. The total catch is $1.469 million. So it's your typical rookie deal, even for first rounder. Boy, since that CBA that got redone in 2020, where the league was the clubs are sick and tired of first rounders making too much cash. They don't get a lot of money until their 5th year option.
Yep. Yeah. And then they made it so that 3 years you have to wait to get your money instead of 2.
That was the Banner rule, right? The Joe Banner rule.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Good stuff. That finishes off our look at all the new contracts with the Eagles from their acquisitions. A lot of interesting numbers there. Hope everybody enjoyed it. People have been asking for it, and that'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.